Hi, welcome to Dreams Recycled podcast and video series. And today I'm speaking to Steve Kane, who is a Boston-based author, entrepreneur, investor, and divorced dad of two boys, I found out today. And he's also the author of Fxxx, Get a Divorce, the Guide for Optimists. So welcome, Steve. How are you?
Hi, Tiffany. It's great to be here. I'm great.
So, obviously we work in the same industry, and your book and your platform, gethappy.life, caught my attention because you share a lot of the same philosophies as we share at Dreams Recycled, that divorce is obviously not the end of everything, or could be, but it's much more the beginning of everything. And so tell me, how did you get to decide to write this book?
Okay, yeah. I am relatively new to the world of relationship advice and marriage and divorce, but I've spent most of my career in digital media as an entrepreneur, as an investor. But I went through a divorce myself about 4 or 5 years ago, and I really, reflected quite a bit on what I went through. My ex-wife and I were, I have to say, for the record, my marriage is going to be one of the highlights of my life. And it was on balance an incredibly positive experience. She's quite a lovely human being. And it ended poorly. And why did it end poorly? I think she and I made some mistakes. Probably the number one mistake we made is, even though we both knew that the marriage was more or less done, we were still amicable. We were no longer madly in love. We weren't having like a passionate relationship. We weren't having a romantic relationship. And we'd been together for a good number of years, over 20 years at that point. And yet we stayed together. Mm-hmm. And we felt like we had to stay together. And we felt like it was the right thing for the children, or for our image, or for our sense of self-worth. And that was just a disastrous mistake. And we really had a couple of years of what I like to call like the pressure cooker, which finally blew off the lid. And then our divorce ended up being, kind of very contentious and unsettling in a way that was just completely unnecessary. And that I feel like we completely drew upon ourselves. And I'm happy to report, here we are X years later, and we're amicable, we're good co-parents, we're good friends, which just reinforces for me again this idea that so much of what modern people put themselves through in concluding a marriage and moving on to the next chapter is just unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. Yeah, it absolutely is unnecessary. But I think we all kind of fall into that. We are the sandwich generation, especially our generation. We've been brought up with parents who are either still together or view divorce as not necessarily a brilliant thing to do, and the whole kind of stay together for your children, which our generation is kind of stuck in the middle. And it's a shame, because we, as you just said, everybody knows divorce doesn't happen overnight. It's at least 2 years at the end of your marriage statistically, where and your spouse knows that this is going to end in divorce or not well.
Yeah, right. I completely agree with everything you just said. And I would add also, I think that we're the generation, maybe hopefully the last generation, that enters marriage in kind of a pressure cooker way that's unnecessary. And so when we, take this vow of till death do us part, or whatever it is we say, it adds this layer of pressure and this layer of obligation. I mean, maybe that's too strong a word, but this layer of expectation that I think is completely silly, frankly. It's just not borne out by the vast majority of people's experience. And it puts this, self-imposed, heaviness into thinking about the organic evolution of any relationship over over time.
Well, and any person over time, right?
Thank you. Any person over time. Perfect.
Because
Right.
we are constantly growing, we're evolving, we're becoming who we were supposed to be. And quite frankly, no one nowadays is the same person as they are at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And
Absolutely.
so to find two people that can both grow and evolve and also stay together is very difficult.
And extremely rare. And that's not a bad thing to say that it's rare. And congratulations and, intense jealousy on my part for the couples that actually somehow find that, or I should say somehow make that, because it's not a natural state of affairs. It's something that two people have to put a huge amount of work and lifetime commitment into. But by the flip side of the coin is, because it's so rare and because it is so precious and special and unusual, the rest of us should just, not feel like we're bad people, or that we're doing something bad, or that we are violating some kind of societal requirement when we get to the end of, our marriage. And whether that ending is, 2 years, 20 years, like there's no judgment implied. There should be no judgment felt. As long as we all kind of acknowledge that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and do our best to do it the right way and to be nice, basically.
Right. Right.
To our partners.
Well, and that benefits everyone. I mean, that's very similar to Dreamsrecycled philosophy. It benefits everyone to be nice. It benefits you, even though you may be filled with anger and angst and drama filled. But
right, and most of us are, for very good reasons. But
yeah.
that's a short-term phenomenon, not a lifetime.
Yeah, it benefits you, benefits your spouse, and most importantly, if you have children, benefits them. No child wants to go through trauma, see their parents distraught, unhappy, fighting with each other, anger, especially when, most of our children, they're born out of love. It would be nice if we could divorce out of love also, which is, not often said.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things I kind of discovered during the course of my divorce, and was really pleasantly pleased to discover, and write quite a bit about it in the book and talk about it a lot with everybody I know who's interested in the subject, is that the thing you just described, that like two parents who are breaking up, a couple that has children, two parents that are breaking up that do it in a nice way, have almost nothing to fear about the long-term effects on the children. That's just kind of a myth. And that social scientists have now been studying the effects of divorce on families and children for decades and decades. It's 2019, and the data is very, very, very clear that children of divorce have roughly the same lifetime experiences or outcomes as children of marriage. So roughly the same rates of going to therapy or not going to therapy, roughly the same rates of success or not success, roughly the same rates of having healthy, happy relationships in their own lives and not. The one exception is if the parents make either, stumble into or make the terrible choice to go to war as part of a divorce, and then act out the war in front of the children, or worst of all, make the children the rope in a tug of war. And that, can have some pretty tragic long-term effects on any young person.
Well, and also the studies are showing more and more, it's actually more detrimental to stay in a miserable, unhappy marriage and model that situation and that relationship dynamic to your children than peacefully divorcing and both finding happiness again.
I find that I'm so gratified. I'm thrilled to hear that actually that social scientists are documenting that, because it so perfectly mixes with it passes the common sense test, right? We all know that, right? Whether it's a marriage or any other relationship or a workplace, like people, kind of are like sponges almost. And if there's negative energy in the group or in the place or in the home or in the family, like they just suck up that negative energy and themselves become, kind of have a worse experience of life because of it, and perhaps like a lingering long-term experience of life because of it.
Well, absolutely. I've never, ever met a child from divorce or spoken to a child of divorce, even an adult who's been through divorce, who did not want both their parents to be happy.
Right.
I mean, that's a natural human reaction. We want our family members to be happy.
Another, kind of small piece, but I try to, remind people is it is 2019 or whatever. It's the modern world. Congratulations. We all live in the modern world. And if you take a minute and think about it, if your children have any kind of social group, if they're at school, for example, or if they go to church or synagogue, whatever, if they have a social circuit, if they have friends, they're surrounded by divorce and alternative families. They don't feel there's any stigma attached to a household with one parent or three parents or two parents of the same gender or a conventional, male and female pairing or divorce or remarriage. They think it's all normal. They're surrounded by it. Most of their friends have some kind of home life that's not exactly the same as everybody else's. And so that's the good news. So, if you are the couple that's ending your relationship or your marriage, you don't have to feel, embarrassed or ashamed in front of your children. You don't have to project onto them that they should feel embarrassed or ashamed. If you treat it as a normal, healthy part of life that normal, healthy people live through, they'll just accept that because they see it every day already.
Well, and having your children learn to be resilient is a really good thing in life. I mean, we're in kind of the stage of life where on average people change jobs 11 times, people get remarried or have different relationships multiple times. I mean, the only consistency in life is change.
Right.
And having children be able to cope with that and function with that and know that, okay, this isn't the greatest thing ever, but we're going to get through this and move on to better things and kind of whatever it is in the future is a really positive thing, in my opinion.
I agree. And, something that I thought about a lot in my own case, and I try to talk to people about, if we believe the statistics, and I do, close enough to approximate the reality. And so roughly 1 in 2 marriages don't last forever. Well, if that's true, then our children have a 1 in 2 chance, 50-50 chance of their marriage not lasting forever. Yeah. Well, therefore, isn't it part of our job as a good parent to show them how it's done? To show them the amicable, loving, civilized way that people move on from a relationship. And isn't that an incredibly useful thing for them to learn and to, to bring into their own life later on?
Yeah, it is absolutely. So one of the things that's really interesting about your story is you just admitted you had kind of a contentious divorce situation. And now you have gone on to co-parent and exist amicably, which congratulations, that is not easy.
Yeah.
So can you tell us how you did that? Because I think a lot of people fall into that kind of dynamic. The one or the other one just hold on to so much anger that they can't co-parent, they can't be civil. So how did you get to that place?
Well, I'll give you my version of the story. Of course, my ex would be interesting to hear her version of the story, and it probably maps mostly similar to what I'm about to say, but she's a unique and interesting person. She may have her own take on it. But okay, with that long caveat lead on, I'm happy to tell you that in our case, we liked each other. I mean, we were friends. We were, lovers. We were husband and wife. We were collaborators. We were, we did all sorts of things over the course of the 20 odd years that we were together. But there was always a friendship at the middle of it. And even at the end, when kind of the romantic or sexual or passionate part of the relationship had kind of run its course, we weren't one of these couples who were married but so estranged we couldn't go out to dinner together. And we did. And we would go to the movies and we would chit chat and so basically I would say that both of us, once the storm blew over, were very happy and even eager to put that back, to go back to being friends. I mean, we liked being friends. We were, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm going to guess that the vast majority of people who get married love the person they get married to on the day they get married. Maybe there's a certain amount of infatuation. Maybe there's a certain amount of swooning passion and all those wonderful things. But I would hope that at the core, there's a certain type of basic good chemistry and compatibility, especially in the modern world. You're not getting married because your families have decreed that you shall get married, whether you like the other person or not. So hopefully you've opted in for all sorts of good reasons. And so hopefully everyone, if they look inside their hearts and are willing to do it, in spite of all the kind of tough or grinding or antagonistic things that may happen in the course of the breakup, which we know, of course, does happen. But, you know, if you can kind of get into the time machine and go back and remember that you did like this person and kind of rekindle that like. You may not rekindle the love. You may have all sorts of hard feelings about the breakup. But if there are children involved, if there's no children involved, you know, sayonara, go on vacation, never come back, whatever. But if there are children involved, you have this obligation to interact with the other person. And, you know, my ex and I think very easily in our case, because we were good friends for so long, fell back into the pattern of being friends. And that's worked. That's all that we need to do. We're divorced now. She has her own life. She's an independent person. She's got her own stuff going on. So do I. She doesn't need me to do anything other than be a good friend when she needs one, and to be her friendly collaborator in parenting, and likewise. And for us, somehow we made it happen. By the way, not through some deliberate thing. We didn't sit down with a therapist. We didn't go out to have a long dinner to map it out. It had to wait until the storm blew over. But once the storm blew over, we fell very easily back into that good pattern.
Yeah, because I wholeheartedly believe that most of the storm of divorce, obviously it's an emotional pain, but more than that, for a lot of people, the pain of divorce and the turmoil while you're in the divorce process is based on the fear of change and uncertainty. And so you're bombarded by, like I tell people, the worst thing you can do is talk to your friends about their divorce. Right? Because everyone has a horror story. Everyone has a, you know, whatever it is. And the court system, obviously, as you know, not the greatest in America,
Right.
For family law. And I feel like a lot of divorcees, if they realize that the worst case scenario wasn't going to happen, and that, you know, they're not going to end up with no custody of their children, they're not going to end up living in a box under I-4 here in Orlando, which
Right.
is, you know, kind of people buy into that, then if they kind of use some common sense and realize that that's probably not going to happen, then the emotions and the turmoil of in the divorce process wouldn't be so extreme. And therefore, like you said, it would go easier back into being respectful, being civil, being friendly.
Yeah. And by the way, you know, my compliments to you and, you know, the people who do the work that you do. You know, I'll throw my book into there. You know, hopefully there are resources for people now who are in that, you know, at one point I used the phrase divorce curious, you know, still married, wondering if they should break up, wondering what breaking up is like, wondering about the legal or financial, you know, ramifications, all the other practical things. There are resources now that people can go and play it out in their minds.
Absolutely. So is that really what your book is directed at? So F it, get a divorce, the guide to optimists. Is that kind of the core message of your book?
Yeah, I would say the short answer, yes. Slightly longer answer, I would say there's kind of two messages. One is, you know, congratulations, we live in the modern world. And in the modern world, we're going to live to be 80 or 90 or 100 years old. And for almost all of that time, we're going to be in good condition physically, emotionally, intellectually, sexually. And so if you're unhappy at 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, whatever, you're sentencing yourself to this incredibly long prison sentence of unhappiness. Don't do it. It's okay to move on. It's okay to want to move on. And if you do move on, you've got this very long horizon in front of you to have new chapters of your life. And you don't have to have, you know, the ball and chain dragging along with you all the time. So that's kind of big message number one, I guess. Number two is that divorce does not have to be war.
Right.
That there's all sorts of resources, whether they are financial resources or literary resources or just internal emotional resources to help any particular individual create, you know, kind of a breakup scenario, process, environment that's, if not warm and friendly, at least not cold and ugly. and that the benefits of that to you, to your children, to your, even to your ex, you know, who you may not care about in this one moment, but if you have children, you will care about later, again, as you have previously. You know, the benefits are huge and the downsides are huge to going to war. You know, one interesting thing, you know, you mentioned the legal system a minute ago. You know, in my life, in my experience, and in my, you know, in my book, you know, I have like total schizophrenia on the subject of the legal system and lawyers, particularly divorce lawyers. On the one hand, I tell people, you know, divorce is a legal process. It is the undoing of a contract and the replacement of the old contract with a new contract that is a very important contract in most cases and will have very intense effects on your life going forward. So don't be foolish. Don't think you can be your own attorney. In the most cases, you do need an attorney.
Right. If you have assets, you have custody of children issues, you need an attorney.
You need an attorney. So that's, you know, kind of split brain part one. Split brain, you know, part two is be careful, because all litigators, and in particular divorce attorneys, have a basic built-in conflict of interest, which is that the messier the fight, the better they do financially, the more money they make. And so be careful and be a good manager of your lawyer, because if you stumble into a relationship with a lawyer who maybe even, you know, isn't necessarily like a bad person or trying to hurt you, they just have a very perverse incentive to let your fight become worse, and rather than taking the shortest path to making it better. And only you, me, you, Tiffany, us, the individuals, can actually lay down the law and say, no, it's not going to be a horrible fight. I'm not going to engage in a horrible fight, and I'm not going to rise to the bait. Even if my ex decides that they are in, you know, in the mood for a horrible fight or want to be provocative or antagonistic, I'm not going to take the bait, and I'm not going to have my divorce fall into that pattern. Right. And so that's kind of like the, you know, the two minds about lawyers. You need them, but be careful.
No, and I think that's good advice. And I will say, obviously, not all lawyers are bad. There are actually some really good lawyers who have, you know, more kind of, I don't know, more a giving nature, that maybe they've been through divorce or they know or whatever, and they actually are doing it to help people. So we won't lump them all together. But, you know, I agree with you. You have to be careful, and you don't want to go down the war path. But unfortunately, as you probably understand, and I know from personal experience and from obviously our clients, in the courtroom, it takes two people to move through the court system appropriately. It only takes one to wreak total chaos.
Right.
So for those people dealing with that, God bless you, because you need more support than anyone. And that's, you know, you don't really have a lot of control over that. There's
a whole book that could be written on that one subject right there, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And so let's talk about something that I love. If you probably don't know a lot about me, but if you listen to my other podcast, I've been on I don't do it anymore. I went on 400 dates after my own divorce.
Awesome. Wow. Wow. Wow.
You know, why not?
Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was married for 16 years. I was all, you know, my entire adult life I was with someone. And so I didn't know. I didn't know who to date. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know any of it. Right. So, you know, I kind of did a giant social experiment, which was actually interesting. But so what do you think about dating after divorce?
Oh, I'm totally dying to talk about this subject, but first I have to ask, over what time period did you do?
Oh, I was like 2 years, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
maybe a bit more.
I think there's a whole book in that, you know, my 400 days. So, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, kind of view the whole idea of like, oh my God, I'm not going to be married anymore. I have to date again. They view it with like trepidation, almost like dread, or like certainly anxiety. The anxiety I get, we're all anxious. Like we're just, if nothing else, we're just rusty. We haven't been in circulation for some period of time because we've been married. However, for most people, I think that they are in for a very pleasant surprise on at least one level, which is that in the ancient days, and maybe I'm a little ancient, but in the ancient days, well, how would you go about even trying to meet new people? You'd friends of friends, you'd kind of let people know
your friends barbecue, church, yeah.
Or in, some kind of like miserable evening sitting on a bar stool hoping for like the world's most statistically random event that somebody you really like is going to walk in and start talking to you, or vice versa. Whereas today, so I would say in the ancient days, we had a problem of undersupply. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the modern world. Now we have the problem of oversupply.
Hence 400 dates, right? It is.
Hence an ambitious woman who is willing to put in the effort can go on 400 dates.
Right, absolutely. Well, anyone can. This is what, there is
a certain amount of energy. I have to give you a lot of credit for, at some point, like you're obviously in, good physical condition, you're kind of a marathon. No, but absolutely, like anybody can. There's all these apps, there's all these websites. Mm-hmm. People are not shy about saying, hey, look at me, I'm here, I'd like to date, I'm available. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, it's this issue, like I said, of oversupply. And also it's a very interesting exercise in a world where there's a lot of supply. We get a chance to be quite reflective, especially when you've been married and divorced and you have all this life experience of thinking, well, what do I want? Mm-hmm. Exactly. If I God forbid, if I actually have the choice, like what do I want? Do I know who I am? Do I know what I want? Will I be able to say yes if the right thing comes along, or am I not ready to say yes? And if I'm not ready to say yes, does that mean I have to be a recluse? No. If I'm not a recluse, does that mean I'm comfortable being in a casual dating situation? Or am I just emotionally unprepared for some kind of casual interaction with a new person? Mm-hmm. It's
well, that's
a good thing.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. I think it's an amazing thing, right? Because you can choose, you get to choose. And I tell people, as long as you're honest about what you're doing, it's okay, right? So I was very honest. I told everyone, I'm just divorced after 20 years or whatever. I've never been on a date. I don't want a relationship. I'm not looking for anything. I just want to go out and meet new people and figure out what I want to do. And there are so many people in that boat who are out there wanting to do that too. You don't have to feel bad about that.
No. No. In fact, if you're as kind of transparent and honest as you just described, you'll be greeted with a lot of like kindness and affection from people who are in the same boat, basically.
Yeah, because like you said, there's no reason to be a recluse. I think that's one of the most difficult parts about getting divorced is kind of that transition from being a we to an I. And if you're sharing custody of your kids and now all of a sudden you have time that you never had before,
right?
What are you doing with it?
Right.
And so I feel like dating is actually a good way to learn about yourself, to learn about other humans, and to really kind of solidify, like you said, if you go into it knowing what you want, then you have a plethora of choice and you can make hopefully better choices and good choices and, get into a relationship eventually when you're ready that really benefits you. And I know that second and third divorce rates are higher, but I feel like people like you with your book, people like our company, other people in the divorce industry, we are helping people make better choices the second time around. Because to me, that's like the worst thing you can do is like get out of a relationship, get straight back into the relationship. It's the same relationship.
Right.
Do it again and then go, oh. And
right.
So the
especially if you kind of stumble into the awareness that you're doing it for more or less the wrong reasons, meaning I can't picture myself as being alone. I have this void of of terror that I can't be alone. So therefore, I'd rather be in a bad relationship than no relationship. And no, I mean, I can't speak for every single human on the planet, but I will say for the vast majority of us, that's really a terrible decision, and that people should give themselves time to see what stage of life they're in and what they really want. And if part of that means being somewhat alone for some period of time, okay.
Well, yeah, and also being single can actually be really, really fun. Who knew? But it can, right? There's nothing
Absolutely
wrong with being single. There's
right.
nothing wrong with having that autonomy to go, today I'm doing this, and I'm not telling anyone, I'm not asking anyone, I'm going wherever.
So amen to that.
It's on Friday.
I completely agree with that. And I would also say that, again, without, I was never like I never liked to date just for dating's sake, but I do like dating.
Yeah.
I like meeting new people, and I particularly like it in a world where, like, had our paths crossed, and I met a woman who's like, look, this is where I'm at. I'm interested in meeting new people. I may or may not be ready for a relationship, but I like going out and trying to. I would have been so excited to meet somebody like you, because like I was in that mode for a long time myself too, and it's fun. It's fun having that kind of ability to do that. Like I said, like in the ancient days, that was never on the table for.
No, this is why, small towns, even today, everyone is married to everyone somebody knows, right? It's location, locale, geolocation of partners, basically.
It's interesting too, because, when I speak to, kind of a younger generation, say 20-somethings or even, young 30-somethings today about this subject, they kind of look at me like I'm out of my mind. They really don't know what I'm talking about, because it has never occurred to them to layer the dating experience with the kind of expectation and pressure that my generation does. Like, is this leading to a relationship? Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And they don't really even think about it until they're at least partway down the path. And they certainly don't think about marriage until they're nicely down the path, which I really admire about the way the younger generations think about marriage today.
Yeah, because they have more independence, which is a good thing, right? That's a good thing for everyone. Because I think any marriage or any relationship has a much higher chance of working if both of you want each other, but you don't need each other.
I would add one other thing, to the whole, topic of dating. A minute ago, you advocated for total honesty. I completely agree with you, with one tiny little, caveat that if I've spent my professional career in digital media, and there's this notion of search engine optimization. And what does that mean? Search engine optimization means, well, when you type a search query into Google, say, like, what comes up for listings, and you can try and have your website or your ad or whatever, like, get better placement at Google if you organize it in a certain way, and that's called search engine optimization. I would tell people, if they bothered to ask my advice about like online dating or apps or whatever, it's okay to fudge a little for search engine optimization. I'll give you an example. So, when most apps, when you're one of the search parameters is age, okay, and sometimes there's like a checkbox like, oh, I only want to see people who are under 49 or younger or something like that. Well, if you're 50, you're just not going to show up in that search. And the person who's doing the search, that may be completely random and arbitrary for them. They'd be perfectly happy to date somebody. If they're willing to date somebody who's 49, they're not going to care about 50. Frankly, they're probably not even going to care about 55. And so I will go out on a limb and say it's okay to fudge your age a little bit for search engine optimization, as long as you also couple that with just total transparency and disclosure when you actually meet somebody. Meaning, okay, I said I'm 49, I'm really 54, I show up, I have a lovely, 90 minutes with this person, we have a drink, we giggle, we have stuff in common, we're probably going to want to see each other again. At that point, I feel like it's my obligation to say, hey, I hope this doesn't, kind of break the spell of enjoying my company, But for search engine optimization, I said I was 49 and I'm 54. And let the other person, you know, kind of respond to that. And if that makes them feel like they don't want to see you anymore, that's their choice. But they can't really fault you too much. All you've done is buy them a drink or waste 90 minutes of their time. Anyway, I just think the whole subject of how these dating apps organize us and profile us is something that people, it's in their interest. It's in all of our interest to kind of be thoughtful about the way we present ourselves in the search side of dating.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, I mean, age is a number, etc. I think a bigger issue on all those dating apps are people who alter their photos or put up 10-year-old photos. I mean, because that's something
that's weird. You know, that I completely agree. That falls into the deeply weird category.
Yeah.
One of the weirdest dates I ever had, I, you know, met somebody in person after chit-chatting with them and getting to know them a little bit online through an app, and they looked absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing like the pictures that were on the site. And it was kind of startling and odd and made the whole experience really awkward. I kind of felt like this person must be a psychopath because they must know that when they walk into the room, they don't look anything like, and they just think, oh, the other person's not going to care.
Well, and I think it's silly because there is somebody for everyone. Like we said, I mean, there are 7 billion people on this planet, more than that. There is somebody for everyone. You don't have to lie about your looks or your weight or your age or your religion or whatever. I mean, there is somebody for everyone. And so I think that's a positive thing, right?
Yeah.
For hope.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you don't just have a book, you also have a community called gethappy.life.
Yes.
And so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yes, I'd love to. You know, my hope, my vision, you know, I'm a startup guy. I've started a number of companies, and you know, so gethappy.life, you know, I kind of think of almost as like, I'm almost like starting a record label. I'd like to start a publishing house. All these old terms are kind of inadequate, but a place where new voices can be heard and can be sponsored, meaning, you know, in the way that like a record company in the old days would find a young act and invest some money and help that act kind of get their talent, you know, more visible and get out in the world and be seen and be known. I'd like to do that, you know, for young's the wrong word because I don't really care whether they're young or old, you know, chronologically or biologically, but new voices, new teachers that have some wisdom to share with the world and don't know how to get started.
And all positive and optimistic, clearly.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. So
Okay.
gethappy.life. That's, you know, hence the name. It's like that it's, you know, it's hopefully, you know, kind of finding new voices of people who have interesting thoughts on how to enjoy life more, one way or another.
Yeah, which we in America, we're actually really behind on this, right? If you look at Denmark, Sweden, most of the Scandinavian countries, even England, which is whatever. I mean, there's whole philosophies on happiness and, you know, simple living and what makes you happy and what doesn't make you happy. And I think it's definitely a really important thing that we should be, you know, teaching our children and focusing on, not, you know, how many cars you have and how big your house is, if you're not happy in the process. And it's kind of odd and strange that it's come to that we have to teach people what makes them happy. But I think that it's a massive, you know, massive area that's going to continue to grow. And I applaud you for starting that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. So thank you. It's time to wrap up. But thank you so much for coming on my show. And where can people find you and find your book and find your website? Where can they get hold of you?
Okay. First of all, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I love your work, and it's really a bit of an honor to be included, so thank you. So if anybody's interested in what I'm doing or the book, go to the website, gethappy.life. One word, gethappy.life. and hopefully everything you need to know is there. The book's for sale at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the usual places. But if you start at gethappy.life, there's links to buy the book and all those other good things.
Okay, awesome. And you can also find Steve at dreamsrecycled.com, and his links are on there also. But look for the links under the video, under the iTunes and all the other podcasts platforms, and reach out to him. I'm sure he can be of much service to you all. So thank you, Steve.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.